Welcome back, gamers. Today I want to share with you guys probably a really long-winded stream where I did a Q&A talking with my chat and answering any and all questions that they asked me, as well as some questions that we got for Q&A from my Discord. So I want to say this is probably around a 2 to 2.5 hour stream if you guys just want to sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and listen to me spurg out on camera for about 2 hours and answer basically any and all questions relating to this raid tier, specs, tech used on certain raid bosses, generalized assassination and combat questions, gear questions, stuff of that nature. This is kind of the go-to, and this is just the second Q&A in, I guess, a series that we'll be doing throughout the entire expansion, where we just answer questions not only proactively but also retrospectively about the current raid tier that we're in and strategies that I use, different type of glyph combinations, small tech for trinkets and glyph swaps for certain bosses, the thought process behind certain moves and decisions being made, and essentially just all different categories. So again, I hope you guys enjoy. If you do like the video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Why rogue like that? I don't know, dude. That's a really good question, actually. Somebody hire this guy. It's a really good question. Oh, that copper vein, I need that. I'm wanted for tax evasion. What the fuck, dude? Basically. Do I have to pay taxes on paying you as an employee if you don't live in my country? How's that work? Are we on some like illegal alien shit? How's that work? You don't pay me, so it doesn't matter? Well, I mean, I will soon, you know? Once we get the payout. Wait, you guys are getting paid? All right, dude. Don't paint me as like, don't do that, dude. People are not gonna take this as a joke. They're gonna think that I'm using you for free labor, man. Guys, this is my indentured servant, Ducky visual. Also, I just want you to know I did bring the cottage cheese to the function. I did bring the cottage cheese to the function. You know, this would be way better if I could read. Why sod bad? Dude, I think I'm just bad at sod is what it comes down to. I think that's what it is in reality. If glyph of gouge, why use other glyph? I literally don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that. Can you actually use Vendetta and respec, or it does not persist? It doesn't persist anymore. They fixed that. Yeah, so that's totally gone. That's totally gone. I know that some people were pooling energy at higher levels, and this is something that like I want to talk about because I was talking to Dasp about this, and I want to make sure that there's no confusion with it, because I think Bicarb's weak aura in its earlier iteration was having people pull to 90, and I think that confuses some people. So I don't want people to get confused about when you're supposed to be pulling with energy. So I made an earlier video talking about how people should be pulling energy to 60 and then sometimes more depending on your haste level, okay? Generally speaking, you would have to, as an assassination rogue, have extremely low haste for that value to be something that you even need to focus on. I'm talking about like even if you are worried about having too low of haste, the reality is that even if you're not perfectly clipping your envenoms every single time, or you're not managing to get off a proper amount of like envenoms with your mutilates or anything like that, right? Something that is also a massive DPS loss that should not be overlooked is holding energy too often. Holding energy for too long also results in a DPS loss. There's a reason that the sweet spot for pooling energy is considered to be at 60 energy. The reason for that is because it both allows you to, when you get no ruthlessness proc, to get 2 mutilates off. That will inevitably mean that you're getting both of those mutilates off if you're not in the process of refreshing a rupture or coming off of refreshing a rupture with your envenom. But at the same time, it also means that you're increasing your envenom uptime, because when you pool for too long, it ends up being a massive DPS loss. And this is why I always say sim everything, because like I don't like to speak in definitives in a game where there's so much variability, but a lot of people will take things that I'm saying as definitives when they're not definitives, right? So I really want to kind of put to rest this idea that like if you're low on haste, you have to be pulling to a higher energy level, because it is a DPS loss when you're pulling for too high of energy to ensure, right? There's this like falsehood that people are creating where, oh, well, because I'm low on haste, I have to pull to really high energy levels. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep my mutilates and envenoms, right? You can't really test this outside of raid because you need that 10% haste increase to really see what that looks like for assassination. But something that's really important to mention is that, like, it's not that large of a difference. It's not that large of a difference. A lot of the things that I like to practice and preach is that you guys need to be like looking at logs and doing your research and checking that out. And that could be really confusing for people who have never done that, who are trying to improve their gameplay. I definitely want to put out like a YouTube video sometime soon talking about that shows people how to check logs so that they can compare themselves to other people and see how that they did in a fight versus how someone else did in a fight, side-by-side comparisons and stuff of that nature, so that you can get like an idea from what the top parses are, so long as they're not doing, you know, something like blatantly like Patty on their DPS. That way you can get an idea of what you can do to improve your own DPS. Already farmed Tolbarad Trinket? Yeah, that'll be sick. That'll be sick. And good. If you guys have not farmed your Tolbarad trinkets and you guys are like coping that you don't need it because Fluid Death and Prestors is this, you guys need to go farm it. It's just like outright better by a decent margin. So outright better. It absolutely depends. You need to check actual fight timers. For most fight timers, it beats. And there's a reason that every single rank 1 parse and rank 2 and rank 3 and rank 4 is using the exact same DPS setup, right? Yeah, it totally depends. See, you guys need to understand that if you're, like, depending on the timer that you're simming it on, right? Fluid Death will beat out certain timers. I'll show you guys, okay? So we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna go fly to, firstly, Ogrimmar so I can get Warchief's Blessing. All right. So we're gonna sim these against one another. I would do a higher sim iteration, but like I'm not doing multi-threading on my PC while I'm streaming. I'm afraid it'll crash my PC. I don't have an amazing PC. Sorry, that's gonna take longer for the sim to go. But so this is the argument amongst, you know, for Fluid Death being worse than Unsolvable Riddle. Okay, just so you guys can understand. All right. So look, this is Fluid Death. Okay, this is Fluid Death. Right? 33,944 DPS versus Unsolvable Riddle, both at 3 minutes, okay? Unsolvable Riddle is roughly almost 400 DPS higher, okay? Roughly 400 DPS higher, okay? So rather than doing like a bunch of speculatory stuff, let's talk about actual fight lengths, okay? So I'm gonna use my fight length specifically because in all of my sim iterations of seeing this, the only time in which Fluid Death has been better was, I think, on one single fight, and I typed it out on Google Docs because I was doing some research for myself just to see what fights it did beat out on. So let's see, I think it's this one right here. Okay, so these were all the fights that Unsolvable Riddle was better on. It was Conclave, Alakir, ODS, Magma, Atramedes, Chimeron, Maloriak, Halfus, V&T, Council, Cho'gall, Sinestra, and the Nefarion was the only fight in which Fluid Death beat out any of the bosses. Fluid Death beat out Riddle only on Nefarion because of how long the fight time is, okay? Yes, it's a longer fight time and also the specific times that I'm using. So a lot of what people need to understand is that like there is no sense of exactly true BIS when we're talking about what would be outright BIS. And so the comment that you're making, Belemorous, no, because that's not exactly how this works, okay? Generally speaking, in all the testing that I did, which was when I was multi-threading at over 100K iterations, okay, just so you guys can understand, this isn't me just doing like 3,000 iterations on stream and then being like, see, it's better, right? There's a lot of variability that can happen, okay? So it depends. The general basis from what I can tell is that if Unsolvable Riddle was popped within the last minute, it always, without a shadow of a doubt, beat out Fluid Death, okay? It always beat out Fluid Death. So I'm gonna pull up Warcraft logs really quick here and I'm gonna show you guys exactly what I mean. Give me just a moment. So we're gonna type in specific boss kill times, okay? So for Conclave was 2 minutes and 12 seconds, okay? So that's 132, okay? 132, all right? Then we're gonna sim this, okay? Just so we can see, all right? Obviously, there are differences that will happen with like fight mechanics, other things that can change this data, but just for the sake of the argument, I just want to show you guys these side-by-side comparisons. I apologize that it's going to take longer than it should, but So this is 2 minutes and 12 seconds, okay? So you trigger the ICD, that means Riddle is up during execute. What do you mean exactly? So this is the DPS comparison at 2 minutes and 12 seconds, okay? And this is what I suggest everyone does. So anyone who's watching on the YouTube video later, or anyone in my chat right now, what you guys need to understand is the way that you need to be testing this is based off of an average of your weekly kill times, right? So do like a few weeks backlog, check how fast you guys are killing the boss each single week, right? For some of you guys that are in more like, you know, casual guilds who are getting better, or semi-hardcore guilds, you guys are going to notice that your fight times are probably going to change a lot as you get more gear, okay? So this might not be as easy to figure out, and most of the time, you're safer using Unsolvable Riddle, so don't worry about it being a DPS loss in the event that your fight time does change dramatically or gets faster or something of that regard. On the only fight in which Fluid Death beat Riddle on any of these bosses, Fluid Death lost on Nefarion by 6.6 DPS for me. Okay, just so you guys can understand the basis here, all right? So it's not like you guys have to worry too much about there being like massive discrepancies between your DPS on either of them, okay? So the next one we'll look at was Alakir. Alakir died at 4 minutes and 39 seconds, okay? So that's math brain, 240, 279, okay? All right, so we'll check the DPS difference. Yeah, so there's no specific kill time. Like I was saying, it's based off of a discrepancy, right? So it seemed like, generally speaking, Fluid Death performed ever so slightly better on fights that were 7 minutes plus, and performed worse on fights that were shorter than that, or sometimes, in very rare instances, would almost equate and like be like plus 1 to 2 DPS or minus 1 to 2 DPS if the last time Unsolvable Riddle was popped before the end of the fight was like a minute to a minute and 30 seconds. But generally speaking, for me and my boss kill times, Riddle always ended up being a DPS increase. And you guys can see here, right? Because this is 4 minutes and 39 seconds. So the last time it was popped was shortly after. It's still a DPS increase, right? We're just coming off of another set of Unsolvable Riddle and you know, cooldowns being popped together. Okay, so this is Unsolvable Riddle. This is 32,794 DPS versus 32,573 DPS, okay? So this is full BIS for both of them, so you guys can understand, right? In my current gear set, it's better. In most gear sets, it's almost always going to be better. The only time in which it's not going to be better is when you're starved for hit. If you can't reach spell hit cap, Unsolvable Riddle is not an option for you, okay? We'll check another fight timer just so you guys can see. We'll do a longer one, okay? For me, Nefarion was 6 minutes and 17 seconds. All right, so 6 minutes and 17 seconds is going to be 377 if I'm not mistaken, okay? 377 versus 377, okay. This is obviously like stolen power is the only thing that really matters here, but we'll just compare the fight timers just so you guys can see them, okay? Just so that you guys can see them. And even then, I think because of this timer, if we were popping our Vendettas off cooldown, I still think that Fluid Death probably ends up being better because generally speaking, unless your phase 2 is extremely long, you want to be holding that Vendetta for Nefarion because the DPS doesn't really matter. A lot of the times you end up stopping DPS during Nefarion phase 2 if your platform kills a lot faster, stuff like that. So there's like a lot of discrepancies in which you can lose DPS. So even in this regard, I would still recommend, if you can go Reforge, that you would use Fluid Death over your Unsolvable Riddle. But then again, who even knows if that's a DPS increase, because the reality is that like, what if you got Stolen Power and then Unsolvable Riddle and Vendetta just happened to be off cooldown during that time and you get a Mega Crank, right? You know, then that makes Fluid Death look like crap by comparison. So it really depends. I'm just using these different fight timers as a way to show you guys the DPS differentials between them. So like, when I tested this originally with Nefarion's End, we were killing it a lot slower, and it looks like this is coming out on top now that I have a faster kill. But I think originally when I did do this, so this is like even a smaller DPS discrepancy between the two of them, right? This is just about 55 DPS here, okay? But when I did this last time, it was over 7 minutes, and Fluid Death came out on top by 6.6 DPS, okay? Obviously, we can't account for stolen power increases, phase 2 DPS losses, you know, stuff of that nature. We're just looking at timers here. All right, next timer that I want to show you guys, let's do a fun one. We'll do 135. Okay, so that's 95 seconds. All right, we'll do 95 seconds versus 95 seconds. So you guys can see the massive DPS discrepancy here. 135 is our Neutron Defense System kill, okay? All right, that's what we're looking at. So this is like roughly 450 DPS to 500 DPS difference between the two. Let's look at another one. We can look at Sinestra. Sinestra is a good one. Sinestra is a 5 minute, so that's like the midline, right? A lot of fight times are different, but we'll do 5 minutes. So 5 minutes is going to be, it'll be 316 because we got a 5 minute and 16 second kill. All right, so we'll check these two differences. Okay, yeah, of course. Let's see. So this is looking at like a very, very small timer between the two of these. So this is what I'm saying. Do you guys see how the DPS difference gets really, really tiny here? Look, this is 31,000. It's like roughly 31,900 and like 10ish versus, you know, 31,920 or 30. Okay, so we're talking about really small DPS differentials here. All right, at this timer. And the reason for that is because it's 5 minutes and 16 seconds, right? So we're talking about a minute after our second use of Vendetta went off, right? And we're talking about, and that's not including the haste buff or anything like that, you know, so it's hard to add those things in. Again, we're just looking at fight timers, right? We're just looking at fight timers for the sake of like seeing how we can compare these in DPS based off of their time. Looks like we got like a kind of crazy thing here, so this is pretty close. There you go. Look, right? So this is the one time that it beats out by like a very short margin, okay? Right here. Look how small that is.
That's what she said!
5 DPS on Fluid Death side, okay? 5 DPS on Fluid Death side. But we're seeing these massive DPS differentials, and just so you guys understand, 5 DPS in reality is nothing. You guys almost guaranteed, unless you're playing like Sim Perfect, are not doing your rotation properly enough or not maximizing things enough to make use of these to begin with. So like you're probably losing more DPS off of, you know, Sinestra if you had a 5 minute and 16 second kill just by messing up your rotation or not playing Sim Perfect, more so than the DPS that you would be losing from using Fluid Death in this point, right? But all the DPS that you gain on other bosses ends up making this not really matter, this 5 DPS gain, right? So this is like the perfect indication to show the difference between the two of them. The next that I want to show you is, let's do 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That's Cho'gall for my guild, okay? 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So that's, let's not do that one. Let's do Chimeron because it's a target dummy. I think that's a good one. So ours is 1 minute and, or I'm sorry, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. We're comparing Fluid Death with Unsolvable Riddle. So the Bis Trinket combinations are Prestors and Unsolvable Riddle, and Prestors and Fluid Death, okay? So these are your DPS differences here, right? Yes, exactly. Okay. So we'll do a 3 minute blaster, okay, just so you guys can see the difference here, okay? Just so you guys can see the difference here. And like I was saying is that like this DPS differential gets shorter and shorter the longer the fight goes on, and then in very specific circumstances, if your boss kill is like 5 minutes and, you know, 5 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that, right? It depends on whenever your last full use of Vendetta was versus with Unsolvable Riddle versus, you know, that uptime. And it's usually about a minute after and some change is when Fluid Death starts to catch up, right? But then on very short fights, that burst DPS has so much value that even though we're looking at 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So the it's been over a minute since your last proc, right? A minute and 10 seconds since your last use, right? This is still higher because there's so much burst DPS. So it's a combination between fight length and how far away from the last minute of usage that you're getting off of the trinket it is when the fight ends. But on shorter fights, that just doesn't matter because it provides so much burst DPS that it's just a large difference, right? We're looking at about 250 DPS here, and that's over the 1 minute mark. So just so you guys can understand, right? We'll do one more just for posterity's sake. We'll throw in a random fight timer. Let's see. Is there like a random one I can pick up? All of mine are kind of mostly timers that would prove and justify a riddle, so it's kind of hard to show like a different one. Sinestra is really the only one that doesn't prove that. Someone give me a random timer in chat, and then we'll go from there and see how it pairs up. I don't want to just use my logs. Or, you know what, we'll look at, I was looking at someone's logs yesterday, we'll look at Hulk Stabby. There we go. That'll give us, like, something that I can just randomly pull from. Cool, so we're looking at a 640 kill time on Alakir here. Okay, a 640 kill time. So we'll do that. What is that? That's 400 seconds. 400 seconds. Okay, so we'll sim both of these and see what the comparison looks like, right? 243 seconds. I'll do that one right after this. What about any fights where you have to hold CDs for specific windows? Maybe like Alakir, you CD on pull during Lust, and once more, so you won't be using on CD. Yeah, so that one's hard to test on its own, right? Because there's not really like parameters within the sim for you to do that type of stuff, and that's also something that I wonder a lot, if I'm being honest. But I'm gonna give a Feelscraft answer here, because that's what I've been doing in terms of Alakir currently, is that with that feedback buff, I'm usually saving it for heroism on Alakir. And that's what a lot of the top logs are doing. Give me a moment here. So we'll go to Alakir, I'll show you the rankings, right? That's what a lot of the top logs are doing here too. That's a skewed log. We all have externals, so it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I would say if you're getting externals, 100% you use it during Lust, by the way. Riddle also allows you to Giga Blast during Lust on Alakir. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of hard to say specifically. And I don't know, like, I can understand a sim well enough to give you guys like a lot of different indications about, you know, where to go in the right direction. A lot for me ends up coming off of just looking at logs a lot and comparing logs between one another, right? So we'll check out we'll check out when this guy uses his cast, right? So let's see his cast first. So he's getting 3 casts off, and this is generally speaking with this fight timer here, right? 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Usually you're seeing 3 casts, and a lot of them are like, we'll look at the uptime of his buffs real quick, just so you can see. So he looks like he's popping just off the rip, okay? He looks like he's just popping off the rip. We'll see though, it depends. And that could be the move, but we'll look at casts, right? So he pops here, okay? 2 minutes is up, he pops immediately. His is pretty good. Then he pops here. This is with Lust, obviously. This is when his guild is lusting, okay? Then he pops it shortly near the end of the fight, and he's getting full uptime, right? Now, it's hard to say because on this specific timer, it's 4 minutes and 38 seconds exactly, which means he's getting like full uptime with those. If we go look at another one, we'll look at Woo. We'll look at Woo, right? You have that buffer time in which you're not gonna lose here, but like if you pop Vendetta off cooldown at that 2 minute mark, you're like maybe 20 to 30 seconds off of a Lust, usually, right? Usually. So we're at 4 minutes and 55 seconds here, okay? And that's, by the way, that like burst window at that very end of the fight there is insane for that dude, right? That's insane stuff for that dude with that feedback. And they chain feedback. That's why his is so high. So he's got a really long lasting feedback. Okay, so then we'll look at this one, right? He gets 3 off. We'll go to timelines. We'll see when he's casting. First one off the pole. That makes sense, okay? Second one at 2 minutes, right? And then he's doing the same thing, right? So it seems like a lot of the top parses are doing that. Cool. He pops here, but it looks like he's saving. Yeah, so then he pops again, right? I don't think I saw his pot. Oh, this thing's in the way. He probably popped his pot earlier. I don't know where he popped his pot. Oh, I think this is when his Lust went out. He probably popped this with Lust on feedback. I didn't see it though, right? So there's like a lot of variability because feedback's hard to, it's hard to say with any of this. You're seeing like a lot of variability in these logs alone, right? Then we'll go back, we'll look at Bastu. Okay, he's rank 1 right now. Kind of hard to say because like all of us are cheesing at this point. So it's nor here or there, like whether or not, you know, like these things even matter. That 1 kill time, that's I think the fastest kill time for Alakir. This is a 5 minute kill time. He's got crazy amounts of external buffs. He's got Unholy Frenzy and then also Dark Intent. Just Woo had Unholy Frenzy. I had Unholy Frenzy. That one guy with the 4 minute 38 second cooldown window though, that's a pretty nutty, you know, lineup there, right? So he's using them right off cooldown because he is just trying to get that 3rd use of Vendetta. If he were to hold, he wouldn't get that 3rd use, right? He's got 8 seconds of wiggle room to make sure that he's using it, and you always use 3 seconds into the pull, right? So he's got more like 5 seconds of wiggle room on his kill timer. the non-buffed guy. So it's like, this is what I'm saying, is that there's so much variability with this stuff. Is Unholy Frenzy from DK Tank? No, it's from Unholy Tanks. Or sorry, DPS is what I meant to say. Okay, so his is first off the rip. Let's look at the 2-minute marker here. 2-minute marker, he holds, right? He's got a lot of wiggle room here, okay? He's got a lot of wiggle room here, right? So he holds, he pops, right? This is probably with Lust, I would assume. Definitely with Lust, okay? Then he immediately rips after. All right, they go into air phase. He's just pumping and blasting, okay? He gets his third use off, 445. And then he gets about 15 seconds of it, right? So there's so much variability based off of the kill timer with this fight specifically and that feedback buff. It's like really hard to say. You just got to do some research and try to mimic what you can, I suppose, as much as you can. It's definitely hard because, like, who knows if Bastu's internal thinking here is because he's waiting for Lust or if he's waiting for Unholy Frenzy. We can check, right? We can check the timer. So that Unholy Frenzy off the pole, okay? And then Unholy Frenzy at 258. Okay, so that Unholy Frenzy's at 258. Well, let's go look at his second set of cooldowns. 250, right? And then he workings right next to it. So he's getting, like, you know, it's like, who's really to say, you know? And it's very hard to sim this specifically. So yeah. Just something to keep in mind, okay? I do like that question though. That was a great question. Thank you for asking it. All right, let's talk next question. What's something else that you guys want to know about? Go ahead and just whatever comes to mind, just shoot me a question. I'm gonna keep my music off for now, guys, because I feel like it kind of derails my train of thought and I stutter a lot more when I do have music going. Yeah, any questions that you guys have, feel free to ask. Optimal way to play Maloriak Dark Phase is Assassination. That's an awesome question. I'll answer both questions, Panda. If I don't remember it immediately, just hit me with it, okay? Okay, I'm gonna show you guys my VOD if it's available. I'm gonna show you guys my VOD so you guys can see what I'm doing, and this is as a rank 2 parse, okay? The rank 1 parse is a guy that's doing a really, like, cheesy strat, but for most guilds, this is what most guilds on the high end of things are doing currently. If you guys are on the lower end of things, okay, you guys are just not going to be able to beat certain markers, all right? The rank 1 parse for that fight, what he's doing is incredibly cheesy. He's basically the only one DPSing those ads, right? He's the only one DPSing those ads. And, like, no one else is touching them besides him. So it's kind of hard, right? But I've got the rank 2 parse right now, and I'll show you guys what I did. So give me just a moment while I pull that up for you, okay? Let me open another tab on Twitch. Yeah, that's a great question, though. I love that. I love that. And even what I'm doing isn't necessarily perfect. It's just what worked for me at the time, okay? So I want to make that clear. It's what worked for me at the time. Video producer. What week did I get my parse in? Give me just one moment. Let me go look. I think that was this week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Maloriak, rank 2, July 9th. That was this week. Perfect. Okay, that makes my life easier. Okay, gonna pull this up for you guys just so you guys can see it. There's a lot of stream beforehand, so give me just a moment here. What rogue am I on during this? I'm on my alt rogue. Okay, this is my main rogue now. It's Omnitron. It's Chimeron. It's Atramedes. And here's Maloriak. Okay, all right. So let me see if I can slow down the playback speed for this, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys here, all right? We're gonna turn the volume down just because I don't think I say anything of value necessarily here. Yeah. Just one question at a time, guys. I definitely will answer them for you, okay? I definitely will answer them for you. All right, so I want to say there are stipulations with this, okay? There's something that you guys need to understand. This level of DPS that I'm doing here is not something that you're going to be capable of doing if your tank pulls those Vile Swill off the boss, okay? If your tank pulls the Vile Swill off the boss, say goodbye to your DPS. That's what it comes down to. Very plain and simple. Very plain and simple. Okay, I'm gonna skip forward just a tiny bit. Yeah, okay, Vile Swill spawning right here. I want to go back just a little bit to, what is this? Sorry, skipped forward a little too much. Okay, all right. So you guys can already see that I've transferred 5 combo points onto the boss. This is another thing that I want to bring up. Whenever you have the opportunity to be redirecting into bosses, if you're trying to get as much DPS as possible out of this, you guys should always be doing this. And always be sending a 5 combo point rupture onto the boss if you can. This will allow you to just get way more burst DPS out of your burst window off the pull when your trinkets are procced, when your cloak is procced, if you're tailoring, right? When your synapse spring is procced and your landslides are procced. This is the most DPS, this chunk right here. No, well, you're gonna be, I wasn't done, right? Okay. You're gonna be growing, even if you have 5 combo points, into a rupture, okay? And then you will just pray for a ruthlessness proc. If you don't, you'll mutilate into slice and dice. If you do, you just hit slice and dice, then do your normal rotation, right? Simple stuff. okay? You guys will see what I'm talking about here. I think I get the Ruthlessness proc, but sometimes it doesn't happen. The DPS loss is very marginal, so don't worry about it too much. Official Jegba, is that how I say your name? Thank you for the follow. Okay, so we'll talk about opener here too, just to make it simple. Okay, so I popped sprint at around 5 seconds, right? I just popped my pot. It's going out literally as we're speaking right here. Okay, that's my pot. I stealth. Okay, and I'm already running into the boss. All right. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for watching, Das. Thank you for watching. Okay, then we go into the boss. We hit the Garrote on the opener. We rupture. Okay, we don't get the Ruthlessness proc. I mutilate into a slice and dice. Okay, pop all my cooldowns. All right, we're popping all of our cooldowns. We're saving T. We're saving T here. Okay, the reason that we're saving T is because it's gonna give us more fan procs, right? And we need so much energy. We need so much energy during Vile Swill to really get a good DPS pump here, okay? All right, we're just gonna do our normal rotation up until the Vile Swill spawn, which is, you know, in the next few seconds, but even then, don't burn your cooldowns immediately. You guys will notice that I'm not going to vanish immediately here. I might. I don't remember if I do. I always kind of do it out of habit here like a dummy. Okay, so I'm going to refresh my Rupture here. Okay, this is a good time to refresh Rupture, right? All right, my gloves just came off cooldown. We're popping gloves. Okay, I don't refresh my Vanish immediately here. What I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to vanish the moment that these Vile Swill come out. Okay, so look, Vile Swill are coming out. I vanish. I refresh Rupture, okay? I'm fan spamming, or I don't refresh the Rupture here. I remember the reasoning for this is, okay? So I'm fan spamming and I'm auto attacking the boss with Slice and Dice, okay? I'm fan spamming and auto attacking the boss with Slice and Dice, all right? I'm keeping my 4 combo points up, okay? And I'm getting 5 stacks of Deadly Poison on each single one of the ads. And it's not about your fan damage here. This is the thing that you guys need to understand. It is not about your fan damage. It's about your Deadly Poison stacks, okay? So that you can intermingle between these two, right? You can intermingle between these two, okay? So I've got 5 stacks, right? My Slice and Dice is getting low. I'm still just spamming. I'm spamming. I also pop Bomb here at some point. I don't think I've popped it yet. I can't tell, the bar's in the way, right? I Envenom, back to spamming. Yeah, I do pop my bomb. So I pop my bomb here, and I also pop my T here, okay? And then I'm just auto-attacking the boss. At a certain point, there's a point at which you want to start focusing on the boss more, because look, I have no combo points on the boss now, okay? Right? I have no combo points on the boss. I gotta get my Slice and Dice off, right? I refresh Slice and Dice. Okay, I accidentally double hit Envenom here because I have some weird input lag sometimes, which is annoying. Okay, I'm taking a lot of damage, so I pop Feint, right? Now I'm back on the boss, right? Because these guys are getting low. Committing more DPS into them sometimes is just not worth it, right? You'll see that I lose like a deadly stack here, but I kept my deadly stacks on almost all of them for the majority of this. I'm also kind of just spazzing out because I'm afraid, and then I lose my Slice. This would have been done even better if I didn't worry about that Rupture and just worried about keeping the Slice and Dice up, but that's okay, right? I got an insane pump off of this. This is 42k DPS here. That's insane for Assassination Rogue, right? So this is the golden like rule right here. This is what you want to be focusing on. This is what's awesome. Okay, then let's look at, okay, so that's optimal way to do Maloriak Dark Phase, right? And there's still room for improvements. Me not dropping that Slice and Dice would have been great, okay? And make sure that you're using the Garrote opener. If we have a 5, give me just a moment. If we have a 5 combo point prior to pull, we should Garrote, 5 combo point Rupture, and waste to Garrote combo point. Yes, exactly. Yes, you should. Yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Okay, sub versus acid DPS in next phase. Can't tell you yet. Can't tell you. We got to see the numbers. My Feelscraft answer is that subtlety is super finicky to target swaps. And probably doesn't scale as well with certain things in the raid. So things that I'm thinking of off the top of my head is that I think Assassination is going to do better on fights like Elisrazor because you get a haste buff on Elisrazor and you just go crazy with it, right? You get to go crazy with it. I think that subtlety on standstill fights is probably better, but I don't think there's a lot of standstill fights. I think subtlety is going to suck on Bethelak. I think combat is just outright better on Shanox unless you're just ignoring the ads entirely, just killing the boss, but I don't know who's going to be doing that on early clears, especially if you're in a more casual guild. Combat beats out a subtlety on Rhyolith. I can't remember with Balrog what his mechanics are off the top of my head because it's been so many years. Major Domo, Cleave fight. Combat's gonna like make that fight look like a joke. And then I don't think that you can Shadow Step during phase 1 of Ragnaros while he's in the pool. So I feel like Subtlety is maybe better single target DPS, maybe better targets like single target DPS, but probably gets beat out by RNG and fight mechanics. That's my take on it currently. That's how I feel about it. That's a Feelscraft answer. I'm not by any means certain about that. The 2-set bonus for rogues at next tier is fire damage over time from critical strikes, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it is. I can't look that up right now. I'm like almost certain. It's like you do fire damage over time every single time you critical strike over the next 4 or 6 seconds or something like that. 4 seconds, yeah. That means that Subtlety is going to scale higher off of that than Assassination because they value crit more, but it's near, like, neither here or there, right? A lot of the parses out of next raid tier for Rogue is going to come from how lucky did they get when they were playing the slot machine on their Tricks of the Trade stat bonuses. That's where a lot of the parses are going to come from. And did they pair those Trixes up well with their cooldown phases, which is very easy to do, by the way, but it's on a 30-second cooldown. Your main cooldown is every 2 minutes. Like, do the math. It's a super easy 1-to-1. But just in case you guys didn't know, make sure that you guys are pairing your Vendetta with your Tricks of the Trade bonuses when you get your 4-set. Easy enough. All right, next question. Vendetta versus Backstab Glyph. Situations on when to use which. Yeah, so this was something that we talked about more during Wrath of the Lich King, during pre-patch specifically, because in ICC with a 30% damage buff, bosses were dying in like sub 1 minute for certain fights like Marigar and stuff like that, right? If I remember correctly, I think the rule is that if a fight is shorter than 1 minute and 20 seconds, Backstab Glyph is better. If it's not, Vendetta is better. You guys tell me how many of you in your guilds are killing a boss in sub 1 minute and 20 seconds. I'm not even doing that, and I'm in the rank 1 speed killing guild in the world. So, you know, find me a boss in which that's worth it on. Some people have asked the question that I do want to answer, is that Vendetta versus Backstab Glyphs on Sinestra with the haste buff. Still Backstab Glyph. Still Backstab Glyph. 100,000%, guarantee you, promise. 100%. We did the sim for it. Backstabby did the sim for it. It still ended up being better. Okay, gotta head out now. Excited to watch the YouTube video later though. Cool. All right. Malakarin asked, what is the most damage you could do at the end of Overkill in your opener with all CDs running? I frequently find myself trying to decide if I send a 3 combo point in Venom on the last GC of Overkill. Do you mean Vendetta? Overkill's just energy regen. Or if I should mutilate to 5 combo point in Venom without the Overkill buff. Seems like a waste of my last bit of a burst window. Sure. I think you mean Vendetta, not Overkill, because Overkill's just an energy regeneration buff. It does nothing for your DPS specifically. Yeah, let me know about that. I'll answer another one. My question would have been about Cold Blood usage though. Sometimes I don't know if I should send with a 4 combo point if I keep rolling into them or keep holding at 5 combo points but delaying. Yeah, so this really depends on like how many AP modifiers that you have active at the time. Like if you have Unsolvable Riddle, Double Landslide, Cloak Proc, or Synapse Springs or something like that. If there's like multiple of them and they're about to fall off, I think that you would definitely want to send a 4 combo point with that Cold Blood, but there's not a lot of use cases for that where they're pairing up mid-fight. Like, definitely at the start of the fight, you want to just send them and make sure that you're not, like, wasting those AP modifiers from, like, Trinket Procs, Cloak Proc, Glove Proc, Weapon Proc, stuff of that capacity. But, yeah, that's generally speaking how I do it. We would probably have to check a very specific sim for that, and as much as I'm decent with the sims, I'm not good enough at the sim to be able to like program specifically using 4 combo point versus 5, so we would have to talk to Backstabby about that. So that's a question that I could probably answer in the Discord at a later time. Okay, sorry, I definitely meant Vendetta, trying to multitask at work. Yeah, so I don't think that 3 combo points is ever the move. If I'm being honest with you, you should go check a target dummy and see how much you're doing with a 3 combo point versus just like your base average 5, and tell me what you think the crit modifier would look like on the difference between those two. 3 combo point Venoms are really weak, actually. They're really weak. You start to scale on damage way higher at 4 and 5, which is why it's the acceptable. Generally speaking, I don't advise 3 combo point Venoms, and I think that rather than paying attention to stuff like that, unless you're like a super top tier player, I really doubt that like min-maxing a 3 combo point in Venom with your cooldown phase is the biggest thing that you could probably improve on in the first place. You know, I think there are probably bigger prioritizations that you could be looking at, generally speaking. Vendetta Glyph pre-pull for Magma, all right, though? Yes. Okay, so I do want to talk about this. This really depends. This is totally dependent on, well, actually, I guess it's not. I guess it's not, because this would set you up properly for the first one. I don't want to say definitively, but if you're in a guild that does a single exposed magma head phase, you don't need to... You don't really, like, this is like a guarantee definite, right? I can show you guys that I know what I'm talking about. Hold up. I have the rank 1 magma parse in the world currently, so I'm doing something right there, okay? All right, anyways. What I did to achieve the rank 1 magma parse is that I put on the Glyph of Vendetta, and then I popped Vendetta on the boss at 12 seconds before the pull, and then in that in-between time, I swapped back to the Backstab Glyph, and then I immediately... from that point, hit sprint, pop my pre-pot, stealth, and then run into the boss and then do my opener, right? The reason that I'm doing that is because you want to pop Vendetta slightly early on that fight so that Vendetta is up when the exposed head comes up, okay? The way that you'll do this is that you still pop Unsolvable Riddle with, like, just on the pull, and then you hold your second set of Synapse Springs to pop on the beginning of the exposed head, and then you pop your Unsolvable Riddle with the back half of... I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. You pop Unsolvable Riddle whenever it comes up, and then you just use whatever downtime is left on the exposed head to pop Synapse Springs, but then you also don't pop Berserking, don't pop Blood Fury, don't do any of that stuff, right? You save all of that stuff for the exposed head phase. I don't know if that timing will set you up properly for the second or third head phases, but I'm almost certain, because of the way that your cooldowns are being popped in that orientation, if you get a second head phase, like if you guys aren't one phasing Magma and you guys are two phasing it, I'm pretty sure that early pop will carry over to the next, the second head phase as well, which will give you more uptime with your Vendetta on the second head phase as well. So something to definitely check out. It's kind of a lot of inputs in a very short period of time before the boss pull. So if you're someone who like has anxiety or just doesn't do well, like, you know, pre-pull and stuff like that, maybe don't do this. But it is a very big DPS gain, very big DPS gain. Okay, any more questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna go to the FAQ channel in my Discord and we'll pull a question out of there. Any more questions? Sorry if already answered, my headset was off, but I'm in a mid-tier guild. Should I be spec swapping to min-max and help kills? I think that depends on the goal of your guild. There are definitely people who take sides in this. In fact, for any of you guys know who the WoW head writer is, Warstry, me and him are both on the total opposite spectrum of this, right? And this is something that I feel differently about than him. So Warstry is like a total efficiency guy, right? Warstry cares always about like doing what is the most proficient on any given fight. And I'm not so much the same way. I will do what's proficient on week 1 clears. I will do what's proficient when we're going for speed kills. I will do what's proficient when necessary. I will not do what's proficient for my own fun and enjoyment of the game when bosses are on farm. I don't care about that type of stuff, right? So I think it really depends on the environment that you're in, and I feel like this is a super subjective question, but I feel like it's extremely important for you as a player to you know, like understand what the essence of, you know, whatever run you're in is, right? Whether or not that's a guild run that's like super hardcore, they expect you to be on top of your game all the single time, right? Or like if you're halfway through, you know, a raid tier and you guys are just chilling and it doesn't really matter, like why do I need to play combat on Halfus when it doesn't even count on logs and the boss is on farm and the boss is going to die regardless, you know? It's not like anyone's DPS parses matter there, right? Oh, the boss dies 10 seconds faster. My rate, I'm doing 2 splits in a single night already. You know, for me, that type of thing doesn't really make sense, right? Yeah. So that's how I feel about that. It really just depends on the environment that you're in, right? But if your guild has not killed Ascendant Council before, right? And you know, like you guys are struggling, you know, maybe you should play combat on that fight to get through phase 1 faster, so that like that reduces the chance of people dying, and then, you know, you get extra cleave damage, right? So you're you're getting a ton of extra cleave damage between phase 1 and 2. So like your healers might have more mana so that, you know, people survive longer into phase 3 or, you know, something of that nature. Maybe you should play combat on Cho'gall because, you know, your guild's struggling with killing adherents, and then you could Blade Flurry cleave them and make it so that they can put more damage into elementals and, you know, just Cho'gall so that you guys get through the phase, you know, phases faster. Maybe you should do it on Halfus if the Storm Rider is dying so slow and dragons are not getting cleaved enough because your comp doesn't allow for a lot of cleave. You know, like there's circumstances in which it would make sense, and I do agree that, you know, if your guild needs something, you should put yourself, like, your own wants and needs aside for what your guild does need. But if your guild doesn't need those things, my personal belief is that, like, don't ruin my fun and enjoyment in the game for something that's just unnecessary. That's how I feel, you know? But it depends. All right. I only raid in 10-man, but I'm definitely into min-maxing every GCD, trying to find anything to push me to 99s for sure. Sub spec for V&T. Stupid. 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 I think you guys should either only be doing one set of sending people down on V&T, generally speaking, unless your DPS is insanely low. Unless you guys are doing a 6+ minute kill time. Let me go look at my kill time in my GDKP the other week. Maloriak and Thralian. So we killed the boss in 6 minutes and 21 seconds. We only sent one group down on the first set of Shadow Realm, you know, I guess like ad clearing waves. I don't know exactly what I call that. We only sent one group down, and it was ranged. And the reason that you send ranged down is because they have far less downtime downstairs than melee do, because melee have to travel everywhere. Ranged do not. They can sit in the very center of the room on the safe part of the phase and just burn everything down, right? A lot of people make the argument, well, subtlety rogues can go down and they can clear it by themselves the entire time and stuff like that. And it's like, sure, they can totally do that. But when you get to sub 5 minute kills, you just don't need to send people down at all. You don't need to send people down at all. My guild doesn't send anyone down. We have nobody going down. And if the answer is that you guys are dying, it's because your healers suck and you guys need to get better healers. And you, as an individual, do not deserve to be punished because your own guild sucks at mechanics and other players slack, so you have to leave the raid, respec, do a spec that's completely non-viable on any boss except for V&T, and come back to the raid. No way. I don't think I'm being selfish in that either. I think that's inherently just people putting more weight on rogues' backs for absolutely no reason because their own guild can't do mechanics properly. I think that's stupid. That's just my opinion, though. Is there perhaps a way to min-max with Envenom and the miss chance on Chimeron? So part of it's RNG. Another part of it is just popping Cloak of Shadows early and often and hoping for the best. That's the simple upfront answer for that. Can you convince my raid to let rogues never do any mechanics and pump big DPS? Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love to talk to him. Let's set up a meeting for it. Our V&T kill time is high 7+ minutes because we are sending our big pumper melee DPS down on the first phase. You shouldn't. It should only be ranged. It should only be ranged every single time. Yeah, you send your group 3 and group 4. How to parse on Sinestra. Don't get targeted by Twilight Slicers. That's about it, if I'm being honest. And then just doing your normal rotation. And also don't be the person who has to gouge the spike callers. Parsing specifically is kind of a matter on Sinestra of those circumstances. Yeah. You can still parse on Sinestra though, even if you are doing spike callers, so long as your guild is killing spike callers really quickly, so that like you don't have to sit off the boss and interrupt spike callers while the haste buff is active. I had a week where I did 38,000 and I was doing the spike callers. I think I got like rank 4 at the time while doing spike callers. I would also add you can ignore the bubble in transition, just cloak the raid blast. It's kind of pointless to do that, if I'm being honest with you. I don't see the reason why you would do that. It doesn't really matter. I guess you're not using cloak there, but I don't think you're really gaining up time in any capacity by doing that. What, are you just running back to the boss early? Is that what you're doing? When and how should I be using redirect as Sin on Conclave? So it kind of depends. If you guys are not one-phasing Conclave, it really comes down to you should just be putting it on Nazir because you're about to go into a big DPS burn and all your cooldowns are going to be popped on either that first or second one. Row hash DPS doesn't really matter as much because like on the opener, you're going to use your cooldowns there, right? And then you're going to go to Nazir. You definitely want to redirect on that first one because that's usually when people lust. If you're killing it really slow, they'll lust on the second one. That's fine. It'll be up for the second one. So it doesn't really matter. you just send it into Nazir, right? And make sure that when you're leaving Rohash, you're leaving Rohash with Slice and Dice up at a decent time so that you can go over to Nazir's platform, redirect your combo points, either hit a Rupture or refresh your Slice and Dice so it doesn't have to fall off, and then you're reducing the things that you need to re-up on a completely different boss with less time. We have to go back to Rohash and kill Nazir on our second Sleet Storm. Yeah, so redirect should be up for both of those if I'm not mistaken. Unless I'm wrong on that. I don't think I am, though. I don't know. Yeah, I would just do it on the first one, usually, like, generally speaking. Never leaving the boss. Oh, yeah, I guess. There's some pretty good pad that comes off of killing those ads, though. So, speaking of Conclave, second CDs come slightly late for Nazir. Do we still send on pull? It depends. Are you getting full buffs on the platform that you're doing Rohash on? And are you guys lusting on your first go around for like on that platform with Nazir? Yeah, I think this is really easy. I think Ellie Shaman should be on kicks with Warriors because Warriors get a DPS increase from interrupting. And depending on your raid, if your raid's good and you're not in like a super dad guild, Adherents should just be dragged through melee so that they can be cleaved so less people have to leave the boss. That's what I think. And then when they're getting close to dying, about 20% or lower, you just drag them out and let range finish them off. That's how I feel. People who have all of their melee swapped to them are fundamentally not doing it well, but I also understand being in a dad guild and trying to get your players to move out of Shadow Crash and them sucking at it. So it's like kind of hard, you know? Kind of hard. We do lust on first Nazir transition. Yeah, I would still send them on the pull. I would still send them on the pull because you're still going to get like some of that lust in the second set. So I would still send them on pull. Oh, I got War Chief's Blessing. Let's go. Sick. Oh, it's getting re-dropped too, chat. We're owning. Okay. We're about to pop off now. We're about to pop off. I know it's like obviously not what you want to happen, but like people are saving 3 minutes for when they go to Nazir. You're just in that weird space where like Nazir, like when you go to the Nazir platform, it's just like slightly too early, you know? So you kind of just have to deal. Like it sucks. I don't like it either, but that's just how it goes. Our current strat is to have ranged hard swap to ads, melee stay on boss, and elementals for Cho'gall, melee never touch adherents. I think that's fine. I think you should be stacking the ads on top of Cho'gall. That way they just get naturally cleaved. That way you guys are not losing a bunch of hard DPS on the boss. That's what I think everyone should be doing. That's what my guild does. I think everyone should be doing that. And just let, you know, just let cleave take care of most of the damage for you. Like passive cleave is crazy, right? You have a bunch of DKs, pestilence spreading, you know, multi-dots from warlocks, stuff of that nature. Like all of that helps a ton. And I think people who aren't doing that are generally speaking just not like, they're putting a decent amount of people on cuck duty. And I'm not a big fan of that stuff when there's just smarter strategies, but that requires people to be more on the up and up and smarter. So it's kind of hard to say one way or another what the best, you know, strategy is. So yeah. Are there any other bosses except Magma where it's worth putting your proc trinket on ICD pre-pull? Not that I'm currently doing, but that's not to say that it's not worth it. I think there's an argument to be made to doing it on Canotron defense system if our Canotron is coming out first. I think that's a good argument, and then you just hold cooldowns for that. I think there's an argument for that. Trying to think. Maybe Halfus, but that depends on your kill times. Like if you're gonna lose an entire proc of the trinket after you guys have killed all the dragons, no. But if you aren't, I would put it on ICD till after the whelps die. And also if your guild is not killing whelps first, they should be. But yeah, after the whelps die, you guys should definitely, like if you would not lose another use of Prestors, you should put it on ICD there, or like if you're using key or, you know, whatever, really. Yeah, I would put it on cooldown there. I think that's a good option until you have the 100% damage bonus, because if you're playing combat on that fight, you're popping Adrenaline Rush after whelps die, and then you pair that with Prestors, you're going to be doing nutty damage, right? With the Deep Insight as well. Yeah, that's crazy stuff, right? That would be a massive DPS increase, but I don't think if you would otherwise lose an entire proc that it's worth doing. So that's something to pay attention to. It really comes down to like a case-by-case basis. You know, like I can't say definitively whether or not it's a DPS increase, but those are like really the only ones that I can think of. And the only reason that you're really caring about delaying those in the first place is because we're talking about like DPS increase windows where you're just getting like an insane damage buff off of those bosses. I don't think there's like a lot of on-use cases for that type of stuff. And I wouldn't say doing it on Sinestra is worth it, even though it's like the same parameter, right? You're getting a massive haste buff off of Sinestra, just because, you know, there's a lot of DPS that you would lose on the table off the pull by not having Prestors pop on the pull. And even though that DPS is not as important as the hasted phase, I really doubt you're losing entire procs or like not capable of lining up your procs. That haste buff lasts 3 minutes. Like, there's no way that you don't have a little bit of wiggle room to ensure that you're optimizing that cooldown. How do you drop threat effectively on Halfus? Oh, that's such a great question. That is such a great question. Yeah, so what you need to be doing is that you need to be targeting the Slate Dragon and then vanishing, or like whatever dragon is the last dragon alive. So you definitely have to trick spam, but if you're getting close to hitting, you know, a point in which you would pull aggro on another one, whatever dragon, and as you get more damage buffs, you will inevitably rip aggro off of your tank, especially if you guys are killing Slate Dragon. If you're not killing Slate Dragon, it's a little bit different. Most guilds don't have threat issues up until Slate Dragon comes out because it's a 400 DPS increase, right? And most of your tanks are just off tanking Slate. They're not directly targeting him. So he's getting passive threat generation, not active. So generally speaking, you just need to, whatever dragon is high on threat with you, you need to specifically target it. Vanish only loses threat on your targeted, the enemy that you're targeting at the time of you vanishing, not other targets. The reason that, generally speaking, you don't notice that is because it's a combat drop in open world. And so you don't realize that you're, you know, in open world, like, you don't see that unless, I guess, a mob has true sight, because it's a combat drop, right? So you wouldn't have that circumstance in open world. And in raids, generally speaking, the only thing that you ever have threat on at any given time is your primary target, because, you know, lo and behold, we're a single target class, right? So there's like, unless you've had a crazy circumstance in which you're ripping threat off of a tank with fan of knives, which I doubt ever happens, you probably wouldn't notice something like that. But yeah, but that's a great question. That's a great question. All right, what else you guys got for me? What else you got for me? Those just aren't worth it. Okay, that's easy enough. Where is the weapon trainer? Is he over here or something? I'll talk to a guard. Where are the guards? There's no guards. Do you have any up-and-coming tech us plebs should be aware of to maximize DPS? I think at this point, not really. I think most of the stuff that I've talked about on stream is pretty set in stone for the most part. I don't think there's any crazy tech outside of just like killing the bosses faster that matters. So the slow/fast dagger weapon swap at 30% is not really a thing anymore, right? No, it's definitely still a thing. This is something that people get confused about a lot, and it's something I would actually love to clarify. So a lot of people have been confused because they see me not using it on stream. I'm definitely a little bit privileged here to say that I get special treatment, and I get to hear about a lot of things that necessarily you guys don't, because I personally bother backstabby all of the time. The thing that is currently happening when I'm not using the weapon swap is because it's, generally speaking, somehow dependent on your haste values, okay? And for me, it's like a 10 DPS increase, okay? Now, that can change based off of your gear. We have a massive thing in our FAQ. I don't want to go over the entire thing because it's very long-winded, but essentially, I'm going to dumb it down, and if you guys want more information on it, you guys can go to the FAQ and check that out, okay? The big thing that I want you guys to realize is that it's never a DPS increase if your main hand weapon is of higher eye level. Okay, so if you have an eye level difference between your weapons, let's say a 372 and a 359, the 372 is always going to be in main hand. Just flat out, that's better, okay? 100%, all right? But if you don't, and you have two 372 weapons, two 359 weapons, two 346 weapons, okay? Generally speaking, it's between a 20 to 120 DPS increase that's extremely hard to sim, okay? For me, again, with my special treatment, right, with the more haste I've gotten, it seems like the smaller the gap gets between those two things, all right? And that's not with any certainty. It's a little bit of a feels crafty answer, okay? It seems like that gap gets smaller and smaller the more haste I have. But the less haste I have, it seems like that gap gets bigger, okay? So if you're less geared and have less haste, or if you're in a gear set that has a lot less haste, it seems like it has way more value, and if you're doing your rotation very proficiently, then it's definitely worth it. The other time that it's most certainly worth it is that if you're playing, like, fighting a boss in which there is downtime on that boss, okay? So if you have a boss where there's downtime, then it's massive for you. But generally speaking, you're not really gonna find a lot of bosses where you have downtime to swap at that 35% marker. If you guys can think of any, you guys let me know. I can't really think of any personally in which that's happening on a general basis in this raid tier. That might change as time goes on, and we can readdress that later. There is currently going to be some optimization going into the sim for us to be able to check weapon swaps, but that's not happening at the moment. So it's just really hard to say, and for such a small DPS increase in my current gear, not really worth it for me. Maybe Atramedes, maybe Atramedes. That would probably be the only one that I could think of off the top of my head. Yeah, maybe Atramedes is the move, and that is about that's about as good as it gets, so. And I can't even make effect of that, because in my guild we get to 35% before the first air phase. So it's like I can't even make use of that, for the small DPS increase that it is for me. Okay, I see. So I'm running tier legs and poison control shoulders, so I do have less haste. Could be worth it then. Yeah, sure, it could totally be worth it then. 100%. Yeah, it's really just dependent on gear a lot of the time. It's really dependent on gear a lot of the time, as much as that sucks to say, and I know that that's annoying, so I do apologize that I can't be like, here's an exact number. There's no way to feasibly sim that for you guys, except for like some weird private sim that Backstabby lets me annoy him with every now and again, so it's like, I wish I could get more information on it, but I also just respect Backstabby as an individual, and I don't want to waste a bunch of his time for something that like isn't that monumental. A lot of, and I'll be honest with you guys, a lot of what I was saying is that people were making just blatant arguments against weapon swapping and saying it was really bad and stupid and not worth it, and that it was just a DPS loss at the beginning of the expansion. And I was making the argument that I know without a shadow of a doubt, off the top of my head, without doing the math, that it is a DPS increase, and that DPS increase is not small in Prebis. As we get fuller into BIS, though, it's like, I can't test that stuff. But I know and understand Rogue enough to know that it was a DPS game. And that's where that whole point in the video kind of, from the one video came from. When to pop CDs on Halfus? How many rounds of MC do you sit through before saying screw it and send CDs on the last phase of Nef? I'm gonna be honest, I don't really sit on CDs on Nef because it's not a fight that you can like be recognized on parsing for anyways. But generally speaking, like maybe 1 to 2 at most, just in case I'm like feeling cheeky, and hoping that I do get a 99 on that fight for once. Yeah, but as far as Halfus goes, just after Whelps die. Just after Whelps die, and then whenever they come back up. That's as simple as my answer can really get. If you guys are speed killing that boss in like sub 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I guess directly on the pole, and then just auto attack the boss while you're cleaving Whelps down. That's not perfect, but that's the best answer. And then, at the 300 or 400% mark, depending on whether or not you are or not killing the Slate Dragon. What is your mental checklist for things you do to prepare for Lust or a damage amp phase? Things like going into it with a fresh 5 combo point rupture, or a newly extended slice and dice, or does none of that matter? I guess that's a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't say that it does or doesn't matter on certain fights. So like things with damage amps, it 1000% matters. Things like ODS, it matters on pretty heavily. Magma, Vis, Sinestra, stuff like that. I try to prepare for those pretty heavily by just saving cooldowns, but the reality is it kind of comes down to saving cooldowns. That's usually what it was. There's no way to give a blanket answer for that wouldn't mislead people, so I kind of want to avoid that question specifically, because I feel like that's exactly what it would do, is mislead people. People will take it too literally. But yeah, I guess, if you're not going to lose like a bunch of uses of Vendetta during the fight, and there's like a big DPS amp phase coming up, I would just try my best to save cooldowns if, that DPS amp is coming within like the first 30 seconds of the fight or something of that capacity. Someone had asked if it's worth reforging to expertise for Sinestra. In my opinion, this is, I won't give you guys a yes or no answer as much as I'm going to give you guys an answer that's befitting to what the difference is between expertise cap and not expertise cap for assassination, rather than being like yes or no. Personally, I don't do it. My highest rank parse on that fight, without cheesing ads or anything like that, is, I think I'm rank 2 in the world. Okay, I'm ranked 2 in the world on Sinestra currently, okay? I don't think it's worth it. I don't think that I've seen a meaningful DPS increase from it, and I don't think there's a reason for it. I think if you're in a guild where your tank isn't facing the boss far away enough that you guys are facing the front side of the boss, you should do that, but also you should have a very stern talking to with the tank in your guild to make him not nerf you for no reason. Because even if you are expertise cap, being in front of the boss is still a massive DPS loss. It's just an even bigger one if you're assassination and can't backstab. So, you know, take that how you will, but like I would physically fist fight my guild tank if they were tanking Sinestra in a spot in which they made it so I couldn't backstab. That's just my opinion. Obviously, do with that information as you will. Yeah, I'd throw hands. That's another one from the Discord. Combat gear. The original post says, I started off by having a separate gear set for combat, and for a while it was pretty comparable to my Asa set. So everything simmed higher by having perfect reforges, expertise cap, etc. However, now there is such a large eye-level disparity, 366 for assassination, 359 for combat, that it's literally swapping my main hand to my combat main hand and leaving my assassination gear on, and no reforges is simming 900 DPS higher. Debating on whether to reforge or expertise cap on my assassination gear and swap over to my main hand for combat fights, or picking only key items to swap in for expertise capping and keep the majority of the rest of my gear. I know expertise cap is about minus 200 DPS loss, but it's also the simplest solution. Curious to know what others are doing now that we have some weeks of loot under the belt. So I said in this post that I don't do that, but I do think if you're not someone who is interested in rank 1 parsing in the same way that I am, who's trying to squeeze out like literally any small amount of DPS, the easiest thing that you can do for yourself if you main assassination on single target and then play combat for AoE fights is literally just expertise cap as assassination. I think it's very valuable. I think 200 DPS loss sucks, you know, at baseline, but it's not so much of a DPS loss that it's that big of a deal, and it also comes with a nice quality of life increase that a lot of people don't experience with assassination. As much as I'm as much as I am min-maxing my DPS increases by not expertise capping, there's also such a nice quality of life improvement while being expertise capped of just not really having to worry about your abilities dodging that much. So awesome, dude. It's so awesome. I just go reforge on a boss by boss basis. That is something that you have access to that most people don't. So congrats to you, but like my guild doesn't do that. So 200 DPS is the difference from having a good couple of crit RNG or not. That's true. Yeah, and I don't think 200 DPS is an insane difference. So